Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast. And welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
OC time. Will you take up the sword, /X/?
The boy stared down at the two small pills in his hand. They were a shade of robin egg blue and about the size of a small pencil eraser. The boy stared, weighing the consequences of taking the pills against washing them down the drain. If the boy took the pills, he would become a zombie, entirely dead to all external stimuli. He would become slow, sluggish, sleepy. The boy's thought process would slow to the speed of a cloud, drifting lazily across an open summer sky. The consequences of the boy not taking the two dreadful pills were that the sickness would come back. Until the next morning, when the boy had to again make the choice of taking the pills or not, the boy's head would race like lightning that arched across the blackened sky in the midst of a torrential storm. The boy would hear things that weren't there. The boy would see things that didn't exist. The boy would think things that shouldn't be thought of. Every day the boy had to fight this short internal battle before the symptoms actually began. In a bout of curiosity, the boy decided to throw one of the pills down the gaping hole at the bottom of the scratched white sink and take the other pill. He figured that 2 pills were too many, so he might try just one, just to see what would happen. The boy watched as the unswallowed blue pill circled the drain of the sink, spinning and spiraling in an elliptical way until it was swallowed up by the darkness of the drain. The boy looked up from the sink and stared at himself, staring at himself in the grubby reflection of the cracked and stained mirror. He looked at the eyes that gazed back at him. They were green in shade, flecked with years of hardship, his olive skin marked and marred by the scars from his 18 years of difficult life. The son of a farmer and a shepherd himself, the boy had never seen easy times. Things only got harder when he began to hear things and see things and think things a few months ago. "Too late to go back now," the boy said, as he walked away from his reflection in the mirror. The boy walked from the single bathroom down the hall to the small kitchen, where his mother was cooking over a wood-burning stove. "Good morning, son," the mother said without turning from the stove. "Morning, Mama. Is Papa already in the field?" The mother nodded as she stirred vegetables into a stew that would serve as dinner for the evening. "Are you hungry?" the mother asked. "No, not really. The pills caused me to lose my appetite," the boy said, choosing not mentioning the wasted pill. The boy's parents barely managed to make ends meet as it was, and the pills had been nearly unaffordable. The parents had promised to the boy that they were financially stable, but the boy was not stupid. He understood that his parents struggled. Everyone in the small Eastern European town struggled. The boy and his parents had to spend several days traveling to the closest big city in the father's old truck to get the boy to a doctor when they realized that the boy's symptoms were simply going to get worse and worse. The night terrors, the hallucinations, the voices. The boy described these to the doctors in the big white coats. They told him that he most likely had a mind disease that had a long and complex name. The doctors had called it schizophrenia, or so the boy remembered it. After staying in a mental hospital for several days, while his parents stayed in a nearby motel, the doctors gave the young man a prescription for the pills that he was now taking. They said that 2 pills a day would make the symptoms more manageable. After a few days of taking the pills, the boy decided that he hated them. He hated the mind disease more, though. The voices that told him to do unspeakable things. The horrific dreams that haunted him every time he closed his eyes. The pills did help, but they made the boy different. "Well, I am going to go take the sheep to the field and let them graze until noontime," the boy said. "There will be no lunch today. You should eat now," the mother said, still not turning from the sweltering heat of the stove. "No, Mama, I am not hungry. I will wait until supper." "My dear sweet boy, are you trying to starve yourself?" "I'm fine, Mama. I will return to help Papa in the fields at noon," the boy said as he left the kitchen to go put on his shoes and retrieve his crook from the small shed. The boy passed his father in the cornfield as he led the sheep from the pen down the dirt road. The father waved a silent greeting that the boy returned. The boy continued leading his sheep down the narrow dirt road that was nothing more than 2 parallel ruts. The boy reached the field that was a 15-minute walk from his small cottage and let his sheep wander off to graze. The large circular field was bordered on 3 sides by a thick forest. The 4th side was a gradual slope that went into the rest of the village down below, with the trail back to the boy's house. A singular tree stood near the middle of the field. It offered ample shade against the baking sun, and the boy often sat under it as he watched the sheep waddling through the grass. The boy climbed the gentle incline to the tree and sat in the dark shade with his crook across his lap. A sigh escaped the boy's lips as his head tilted back against the hard bark of the tree. He realized that he didn't feel sluggish or dulled from the pill. His thoughts weren't erratic and wild either. A smile split the boy's face, thinking that he had found a way to balance his medication simply by having it. The boy relaxed under the tree, finally able to let his mind wander without worrying that it would stumble into a hallucination. The boy soon drifted into a light slumber in the warm shade, with a soft breeze rustling the leaves in the tree branches that arched above his head. A bleating cry shredded the boy's soft sleep as he jolted awake. On his feet in an instant, the boy wielded the shepherd's crook like a weapon as he looked around the field. He counted the sheep quickly, scanning the field for the fluffy, ground-bound clouds that devoured grass and gave wool. The boy's blood ran cold as he realized that he was missing a sheep. The sheep and the crops were the only source of the boy's family's income. If he had lost a sheep, it would mean a great loss of income, especially after the expensive trip to the city and the pills for the illness. The boy counted the sheep again and again, making sure that he hadn't missed one. He ran out from under the shade of the tree and into the warm sun. There were 18 sheep in all, and the boy could only see 17. He quickly ran to the outskirts of the field to see if one had wandered into the forest, which had never happened before, for the sheep did not like the dark and menacing forest. As the boy circled the field, he saw 2 sheep, a few hundred feet ahead, getting dangerously close to the outskirts of the field. The boy picked up his pace in order to gather the sheep and head home after his search. As he kept his eyes on the sheep, he heard a rustling up ahead. The bushes shook violently as something sleek and gray darted from the bushes at the entrance of the forest. It ran from the dark green of the forest straight towards one of the 2 sheep. The boy broke into a run, screaming and flailing his arms, trying to scare the sheep away from the beast. The boy was too slow as the gray, 4-legged monster snatched one of the sheep around the throat. The sheep let out a wet, gurgling cry as it was overpowered by the wolf. The wolf shook the sheep by the throat until it stopped squirming. The white wool of the sheep stained red from the blood pouring from its throat. "No!" the boy screamed. The wolf ran back into the forest, prize still dangling from its jaws. The boy looked at the remaining sheep, terrified by the commotion. They had gathered near the center of the field. The boy was torn between saving his sheep and making them walk slowly back to the farm, or running full speed to grab his father and the townspeople to hunt down the wolf. The boy took one last look at the sheep, thinking that they would be safe now that the wolf had made a meal of 2 of his sheep. He took off running down the gentle slope along the trail that turned into a dirt road in the direction of his house. As soon as the boy saw his house, he began to shout for his father. "Papa, grab your gun, Papa. A wolf has come and has eaten 2 of my herd. Papa!" The boy cried as he saw his father toiling in the field. The father was immediately on his feet and running into the house to retrieve his gun. A few other people had left their house to see what the noise was about. "Help!" the boy yelled to several of the confused villagers. A wolf has come to devour my sheep." Some of the villagers returned to their homes and came back out with pitchforks and axes. By this time, the boy's father had returned to his side. "Follow me," the boy's father boomed as they took off towards the field. 7 villagers, including the boy and his father, ran along the dirt path, up the hill to the field where the sheep had been grazing. They reached the field in only a few short minutes, going at the fast speed they had maintained. The group of sheep were still standing where the boy had left them. They bleated and cried in terror, unknowing of the situation that surrounded them. "Spread out," the boy's father said in his thick, booming voice. "To the edges of the field. Find the wolf and kill it on sight. Hack it to pieces if you have to." The father went to the center of the field where the rest of the herd remained. He counted the heads in the mass of wool once, twice, a third time before turning to the boy. A look of pure rage contorted his face. "Count the sheep, boy," the father said, his voice in a deathly low tone. The boy did as he was told. 18 sheep stood there. "But Papa," I said. "Do you think we have time for your silly little games, boy?" the father said, cutting his son off. The father walked closer to the son. Do you think that we can just waste away all of our time? Do you think that we do not have money to earn in the fields?" The father's rage grew, angry at the wasted time and the embarrassment of the scene that his son had caused. The father's hand swung, slapping the boy with an open palm across the face. The father turned to the men that had gathered to watch. He told them that his son was sick in his head, and that he wasn't thinking right. He apologized to the men, then thanked them for their wasted time, and told them that they could return to their work. The men walked back as a group to the village. The boy and his father stayed behind and watched the men descend down the slope to the village. The father turned to the boy and simply shook his head. "Gather the sheep, return home. You will have no supper tonight for your own stupidity. Your pills were supposed to cure this illness, so I can only assume that you didn't take your pills." "Papa, I'm so—" "I don't want to hear it," said the father as he turned to walk back to the village. The boy slowly walked back to the spot where he dropped his crook. He then gathered up the sheep and led them back down to the village, behind the small crowd of people and behind his father. The boy, arriving in town several minutes after his father, put the sheep back into their pen and went inside. His mother was standing in the kitchen, her sewing supplies discarded on the table. She gazed at her son with a disappointed look in her eyes. She shook her head and sat back down, turning her stinging gaze back to her sewing. The boy went to his room to lay down on his undersized and dirty mattress covered in homemade quilts. The boy had slept in the field much longer than he intended to, and it was now late in the afternoon, but he was exhausted from all the running and the excitement. He lay down on his bed and fell asleep in a few short seconds. The boy opened his eyes and looked out the grimy window above his bed. The sky was a deep blue littered with stars. The moon, not nearly full, hung low in the sky. The boy sighed heavily and sat up in bed. He knew that he wouldn't be able to sleep, having slept so much earlier. The boy crept from his room and past his parents. He walked down the hallway, through the kitchen and out the front door. As soon as he was outside, the boy's skin prickled at the feel of the cool night air. It was crisp and the boy could see his breath puff out in small clouds. He decided to walk back up the road that led to the field where his day went sour. Along the way, the boy replayed the events of the day in his head. He felt stupid. He felt weak. He felt disabled. All because of the stupid illness that poisoned his brain and sickened his mind. He didn't ask for this. Why should he be punished? Why should he have to suffer like this? Was his life not hard enough as it is? The boy was angry at everything. Angry at himself for succumbing to what must have been a figment of his mind. Angry at his father for striking him when he knew it wasn't the boy's fault. Angry at God for cursing him with an ill mind, for something that he couldn't comprehend. The boy reached the field, still thinking of how bad the day was. He walked to the tree that he sat under at the beginning of the day, when he was enjoying the sun and the breeze and the fresh air. The boy stood under the large tree, staring at the fringes of the field. The ominous black that seemed to ooze forth from the surrounding forest gave the boy chills. He didn't like that forest, not at all. It had always given him unease, but the field was the best grazing spot for his sheep, so he simply blocked out the menacing forest every time he took his sheep to graze. Though he was scared of the forest, the boy's own anger overpowered his fear. This time the boy stared into the forest defiantly, challenging it, daring it to make a move. A rustling sound came from the bushes and the boy's blood turned to ice in his veins. The hairs on the back of the boy's neck stood up. The boy's skin felt as if it had been electrified. He saw a shape seep smoothly from the underbrush of the forest. The boy was rooted to his spot as he saw the creature walk slowly towards him. The moonlight was shining on the beast perfectly, illuminating every curve of its magnificent silver fur. The monster was still several hundred feet away, but the boy could tell that there was something a little off with this wolf. He couldn't put his finger on it, though. The boy tried to run. He tried to get himself to move, tried to uproot his 1,000-pound feet from the grassy ground. The wolf began to pick up speed as he approached, heading straight toward the boy. As the wolf got closer, the boy's blood grew colder and colder, sending shivering spiders of ice down the boy's back. The boy began to see the wolf more clearly as it advanced. The boy realized that this was no ordinary wolf. This was a creature sent directly from the chasms of hell. No wolf looked like this. The beast's jaws hung open slightly, its distended gums protruding far from its snout. Jagged teeth like shards of glass, slick with hot, sticky saliva, glistened in the yellow moonlight. Its mouth reached all the way back to right under its eye. The eyes that didn't look like eyes. They looked like pits, like abysses, like holes in the existence of the world, where nothing lives but fear. A darkness poured from the wolf's eyes as it walked towards the boy, like smoke from a burning candle. The thing's spine was arched and rigid, its padded paws angled awkwardly, but still it was advancing faster and faster. Not quite running yet, but a slow trot, not even 100 yards away. The boy finally managed to tear himself from his rooted position. He screamed and ran for the village. The hellhound broke into a sprint too, chasing the boy. "Help me!" the boy screamed at the top of his lungs. "Hey!" The boy's strong legs pumped up and down as battery acid ran through his veins and fire filled his lungs. The inhaled breaths burned the boy's throat as he tried to outrun the demon chasing him. The village grew closer and closer, but so did the wolf. The boy could hear it running up behind him, its grotesquely positioned paws gaining speed behind the terrified boy. "Someone help me, please help me!" The boy cried out again. He reached the edge of the village and saw the sleepy people begin to leave their houses. Some held improvised weapons, some held nothing. The boy reached the small crowd of people, clothed in their night clothes, and screamed, pointing behind him, "Wolf!" The people looked behind the boy and did nothing. The boy came to a halt in front of the crowd. "Why are you standing here? Do something! The wolf is coming!" The boy screamed at the villagers. Finally, the boy hazarded a look behind him, turning to see what the villagers were waiting for. There was nothing there but the empty dirt road that sloped up the hill. "No," the boy whispered. "It was there. I saw it. The wolf was chasing me." Suddenly, the boy's father was upon him. He grabbed the boy by the back of the neck and dragged him back home. The boy squealed in pain as his father's unrelenting hand had a vice grip on the boy's skin. The boy watched as the people dispersed back into their homes, some muttering curse words, some shaking their heads. The father dragged the boy to his room, kicked the door open, and shoved the boy inside. "We need to talk in the morning," was all the father said before slamming the door shut and stomping back into his own room. The boy sat down on his bed as tears welled up in his eyes. They overspilled and came running down his cheeks. Hot, salty tears of anger and shame that stung worse than his sore neck from the hand of his father. The boy sat on his bed, hating himself for his own stupidity, cursing everything about his life. And then, like a clap of thunder, an idea erupted into his head. He silently crept from his room for the second time that night. As the boy slowly walked down the short hall and into the kitchen, he formulated the plan more and more. The boy knew that his father had kept his gun on a shelf near the front door. All he needed to do was to make sure it was loaded. He was going to prove to his father that he had seen the wolf. He was going to hunt it down and shoot it. The boy retrieved the gun from the shelf. It was an old and rusted shotgun, but the boy knew it worked, and it worked well. Cracking the gun open, the boy saw that 2 shells were in the barrels. The boy shouldered the gun and quietly opened the door, sneaking out into the cold night air with thoughts of heroism in his head. In the field once again, the boy headed straight for the edge, where the grass stopped and where the trees loomed like the gates of hell. The wolf had come out of the bushes near the same spot both times. The boy took the shotgun from his shoulder and aimed it in front of him. The boy marched into the forest fearlessly. He knew that, with a shotgun, Nothing could hurt him. Perhaps if the boy had broken from delusion now, maybe if he had snapped from his fantasy world, he would have been able to save himself. He could have turned back and returned to the village. He could have sneaked back into his house, placed his father's gun back on its shelf, and climbed back into bed. He would have had to deal with his father, but that would be okay. His father would get over his rage and embarrassment. The boy could have been able to save himself if his illness didn't have such an iron grip on his poor mind. But no, the boy continued to walk into the forest for some time. He was entirely silent as he marched, gun in hands. As the boy walked, he suddenly heard a rustling noise. He stopped in his tracks. The boy heard the rustling again from a bush to his right. He swiveled and fired into the bush. The kick from the gun was much greater than he expected, and the gun flew backwards into the boy's gut, knocking the wind out of him and sending him falling backwards. As the boy tried to stand back up, ears ringing, he saw a pair of eyes in the bushes directly in front of him. When the boy had fallen, the gun fell too. It lay a few inches from his left hand. The boy rolled to his stomach and tried to crawl over to the gun. He was too late. The wolf flew from bush and landed directly on the boy. Its jaws opened, revealing sharp canine teeth. This was not the wolf that had chased the boy to town. This was not the wolf that the boy thought had eaten his sheep. This was just a regular wolf. The wolf's breath reeked of rancid meat and dead things as it snarled and bit into the screaming boy's skin. The gun was still out of the boy's reach, and the wolf dragged the boy further back, tearing into his skin, lacerating his flesh, causing blood to flow from ragged wounds. "Wolf!" the boy cried. "Wolf!" he repeated. That was all he could gurgle as the wolf tore into the boy, eating him alive. Fighting back against the wolf's strength was useless. "Wolf!" the boy cried. The cry managed to reach the village. The cry managed to reach the house of the boy. The cry managed to reach the boy's father's ears. The father woke up and heard the scream. He simply shook his head, cursing his son and his illness, cursing God for cursing him. The man then went back to sleep, sure that his boy was fine, simply in another one of his delusions. The father went back to sleep. "Wolf!" the boy cried weakly, and then his world went dark.
He looked around in the way you would expect anyone to, startled, agitated, and jittering. The first thing he made sure of was to look underneath the bed so as to confirm any lack of orbs, Slender Man, or other internet phenomena that had so ingrained themselves in his normal thought processes. There was no such thing there. He pushed the curtains aside and looked out the window and saw the dead black night and no sinister Mothman in the sky or any other myth. Only the contrast of the stars was there and the half-moon large as a dinner plate. He exhaled sharply and took a piss before going to bed again. The night was brighter now because the day would come soon. As he lay on the bed, he pictured a rift opening in the ceiling and engulfing everything. That was his dream, he thought, and fell asleep. He woke up at noon and made a half-breakfast of dry cereal and got on /x/ again. It was a slow day. The mysterious thread had not resurfaced, and posters were arguing on the minutiae of inane shit more fervently than even a fan fiction writer could hope to achieve. Average day with average posts. He shut the laptop again and took an extended nap until 5 o'clock. He missed 5 phone calls, ignored each one, and deleted the messages. He read the news before getting back on 4chan. He kept getting calls until the late hours. They usually stopped around then. He read about magic and its implications and considered himself a small scholar, like a small god, on the whole subject. He recognized each symbol and every implied meaning and subconscious ramification. He went on for hours on the shit. He found enough threads to dampen his interest by dark. Now he reads stories to pass the time. Short stories, creepypasta as they called them, were common and came in every variety like condoms or candy. There were 1,000 flavors and no pragmatic use for any of them. He looked up and imagined the rift again, and felt it. He thought maybe it was a subconscious thing. Maybe it was the nihilism eating him away, or a black dog following his words. It could be anything. He kept reading stories until he found this thread. How fucking cheap. In this thread, he skimmed every damn thing until he found this story. It startled him, but only in a way that he was surprised that anyone would use metafiction to end a story. A dream within a dream, a tired old ending with no more life. The rift grew larger above his head. In a curled ball on his chair, he moved the mouse and highlighted everything. Now he was startled, but it didn't show externally. He looked up and wondered why nothing was there. And there wasn't, really. It's just, he was fucking with himself. He thought, "Behind me," he said to himself, because he knew that would be the next step in the story. And despite the great illogical mess of it all, he would still turn around because of a gimmick in human psychology that makes all of us limited and idiotic. This quickly became rambling with an echo, all inside of an empty skull. He thought about the story about the notes in dreams, how they would appear to tell victims of torture to wake up, and those magic words brought them back into the cruel but true reality. But it was fiction, because reality would never allow wonder into its domain. Reality could not be ended by disbelief. The earth stalked everything with its cruel mistress eyes breathing down his neck. He wondered if he could write this well. No shit, of course he could write this well. It would be simple. Don't use many words. Disregard the purple shit. He read so much of it earlier. A bundle of purple shit at the beginning of this very story. Wine, cigarette butts, nightstands, all like cheap pulp in a used bookstore written for a quick exchange like a one-night stand. Now it became a stream of consciousness that entered his own. The rift widened, though he couldn't see it. He thought the writer was a one-trick pony, but deep down he knew better. He knew that he was set on something like a hound after blood. He knew that despite the ugly shell it was contained in, there was something valuable there. He imagined a fortune cookie being cracked open and inside. Fuck, where was part 2? He skimmed around. He must have lost it. Part 1 was the beginning of the story, and now it grew lengthy and purple again. It was starting to sound like a freshman's writing project. For some reason he kept going even though it was shit. Part 2 scratched at the back of his brain. It didn't exist. There was no part 2. There might have been at one point, but you fucked it up. That's a direct reference, by the way. You fucked it up. Now the rift covered the ceiling and he went back to the fortune cookie vision. He imagined the fake sweetness and the cracker texture. The note came first as a taste of flat paper on his tongue. He slid it off and read it. "Wake up." There was no reply. A skeleton didn't pop out. In fact, there was nothing at all. Wake up. Now there was repetition, to solidify the drama, to make sure you didn't fuck up and miss it. Wake up. You can't repeat a phrase too many times or it gets tired and is no longer fresh. Wake up. The irony began to fade. Wake up. Wake up. This is no longer comedy. This is no longer horror or satire. It's not even personalized or in a style. Now it is objective, like an encyclopedia, cold and rational. And you're still being told to wake up. The first sentence was a lie. Wake up. The second sentence was a lie. Wake up. I'm trying not to be cheesy, I really am. I'm trying not to sound like a freshman writer. I'm trying not to go so meta that it falls through the fourth wall and just becomes shit. I really am trying for you, but you don't have to read this. Wake up. I am being sincere now. Wake up, wake up, wake up. You don't have to read. Wake up, you don't. All the times you've been bullied or made a mistake or fucked up are behind you now. You're better. You're a human being. No, you're more. You're a person who finishes what they start. A basic and impossible goal for many. You imagine your childhood home. You remember how it smells. You see a fake light in front of you and it projects itself into you and you receive it like a baptism. The rift can't be closed now. What did I say? You fucked it up. This is no longer a joke. You fucked it up. I'm sorry. I can't repeat it any longer. I lied. I dragged you this far to bring you nowhere. But isn't that life? It's fucked. You fucked it up. Think about what you've done. What are you doing right now? Do you think you have any clue what's going on? Do you think others read this the same way you do? This is a personal message. This is a transmission. The subject is, you ruined it. The rift closes. Part 2, a cheap trick for a cheap human psychology. Look behind you.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel as more green texts will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.